Welcome to another video from cardboardeast.com. My name's Jay, I play Asian board games and share what I find with all of you. In this video, we're going to talk about an upcoming Kickstarter for the new release of Hanamikoji and the 7 expansions. If you want to learn more about Geish's Road, well, hit that bell icon and subscribe so that way you won't miss out on our next video. Now, these review copies were provided to me by the publisher, Emperor S4 Games. So the components might not be completely finalized, and just remember that as you watch this video. In my last video, I talked briefly about the history of Hanamikoji. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about why I think it's a modern classic. Some games don't have a direct narrative to guide players along. Some have an emergent narrative that evolves out of the gameplay. Pick up and deliver games are an excellent example of this, usually told in 3 parts. Part 1, you explore the map and kind of build up your trade routes, and you develop your trade routes for part 2, and then part 3 is that big epic race towards the end of the finish of the game. Now, some games go a step further and have a story arc that doesn't necessarily involve the gameplay, but involves you, the player. For lack of a better term, let's just call this emergent strategy. You spend the first few games just learning the basics of how to play. And then you realize, well, this is how I should be playing. And then there's a story arc of pattern recognition and mastering the game. All 3 of these are excellent examples of emergent strategy. However, all of these are big, complex games. Hanamikoji does this with only 28 cards and 15 tokens. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about how to play Hanamikoji. If you're already familiar with Hanamikoji, feel free to skip along to the next part, or stick around and learn how I teach Hanamikoji. Either way, it won't take a long time. Place the 7 geisha cards in a line on the table. The order doesn't really matter, but for ease of play, put them either in ascending or descending order. Each player also gets 4 action tiles, and then you're going to take your cards, shuffle them up, and deal 6 to each player. And then you're ready to play. During play, be sure to keep all your cards hidden from your opponent. The first thing you do on your turn is draw a card from the draw pile. And then you're going to select one of your 4 action tiles to execute. And then you're going to take the tile chosen and flip it over and perform that action. Your opponent will then do the same by drawing a card and then choosing which of the 4 actions to take and then flipping over that tile and performing the action. This will go back and forth for the rest of the game. On the beginning of your turn, you'll always draw a card, perform one of the unselected actions, flip it over, and then it's your opponent's turn. At the end of the round, it should look something like this. The next thing you're going to do is decide the favor of all 7 geishas. You'll compare each one. So starting from the purple here, you'll count the cards and see who has more cards on their side. Then move the favor token over to that side. And you'll repeat this process for all 7 cards. Then you'll compare the favor tokens. If one player has 4 favor tokens, then they win the game immediately. However, if another player has 11 points, and that's shown here by 3, 4, 5, 11. If they control 11 points, then they win the game immediately. If on the rare occasion one player has 4 tokens and one player has 11 points, the player with 11 points wins the game. However, sometimes there isn't a clear winner of a geisha. For example, let's look at geisha number 3 here. Both sides have exactly 1 card. No one wins favor, so this favor token doesn't move and stays here. If the end of the round game state looks something like this, where no player controls 4 geishas and no player has 11 points, then you'll have to play another round. To do that, you'll need to collect all the cards, reshuffle the deck, and deal out 6 to each player. And then you're ready to begin the next round. Keep in mind, though, that the favor tokens do not move. In following rounds, if there is a tie on a geisha where the favor token is on one side, then the favor token becomes the tiebreaker. After you finish the round, compare again and see if someone has won the game. If not, you continue playing another round. And that's how you play Hanamikoji. Now that seems simple enough, but the core of the game resides in your 4 action tokens. And let's talk about what each of them does. You'll notice that each action tile is numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's the number of cards you'll play from your hand. Action tile 1 means you take one card from your hand, place it face down, and then this will be revealed at the end of the round and scored for your side. Action tile 2 means to take two cards from your hand, place them face down, and then they will be removed from the game. Action tile number 3. You will choose 3 cards from your hand and place them face up in front of you. Your opponent will choose one of these 3 cards and score it for their side. You will score the 2 remaining ones. Action tile number 4. You'll place 4 cards in 2 pairs, each in front of you. Your opponent will choose one of the pairs to score for their side. You will score the other pairs. That's it! No added fluff, minis, or fiddly rules. So, why was this game such a huge hit? Well, that emergent strategy that we talked about, it starts taking place in your very first game. You'll begin to notice that the numbers on the cards match the numbers on the geishas. So there are 2 2s, 3 3s, 4 4s, and 5 5s. And the numbers are also the endpoint values. And then you realize, well, if I know all the cards, then I know the composition of the deck. And therefore, I should be able to count cards. And then you can predict not only what cards you will draw next, but what cards your opponent might have. And then your mind explodes because you realize, my opponent is thinking the exact same thing that I am. And you enter this realm of bluffing, card counting, and getting into your opponent's headspace. Over the course of multiple games, you begin to notice like certain optimal moves, or certain card combinations match with certain actions. And if you play with the same opponent again and again and again, you'll begin to notice their facial tics of when they're bluffing, when they're lying, when they think they got you in a sly trick. And all of this happens in 15 minutes, 28 cards, and 15 tokens. When other games go above and beyond in terms of production with minis, plastics, and plastic containers, Hanamikoji does this all with a very minimal view and efficient game design. And stripping all of that away, and you're left with just very clean rules that anyone can play, but not everyone can play well. And that's why Hanamikoji gets the Cardboard East seal of approval, not just for being one of the best card games to come out of Asia, but one of the best card games I think ever made. So when I heard about the expansions for Hanamikoji, I got a little nervous. I began thinking, is that really necessary? Is it just a money grab? Meaning that, is it just some frivolous, fiddly rules thrown over a game that really don't add any gameplay value? This is already a game that is the quintessential version of minimal design. What could you possibly add to this game? Let's take a look. Here we are again with the base tiles from the base game. For the expansion, you'll just remove these and use the one from the expansion instead. This one in particular plays a little bit differently. So action 1, you'll just place a card face up on your side. Action 2 is pretty unique. You'll take 2 cards from your hand, put them at the bottom of the draw deck, draw 2 face down, and you can look at them, and you will score them at the end of the round. Action tile 3 is a little bit different. You'll place 3 cards in front of you. Your opponent will choose one to remove from the game, and then you will play the remaining 2. Action tile 4, this one you will choose 4 cards from your hand to place face up. Your opponent chooses 1 card to give to you for you to score, and then they will take the remaining 3. And that was just one of 7 different expansion sets. While some action markers may be repeated between sets, each of the 7 sets is unique. Wow! It's a 10. Buy it, back it, hit that all-in pledge level, and join Team Awesome, because this is brilliant. I originally rated Hanamikoji an 8, but with these expansions, all 8x7, 56 tiles, I now rate Hanamikoji a perfect 10. Components. First off, I love these cases. They could have just easily printed all 56 of these tiles on a giant punch board and just called it a day. Thank you for not. If you aren't too familiar with Japanese culture, or you don't watch anime or read manga or consume any Japanese media whatsoever, these are omamoris. And you can get these at Shinto shrines or Buddhist temples, and you buy them and give them to yourself or give them to your friends or family, and you get them for any other reason. Like maybe you want them to find love, or be in good health, or be calm, or have economic fortune. But it's those little things that publishers do that I just love, and I love how colorful this game is. Storage. This is going to be a little bit of a blessing and a curse. This is the new version of Hanamikoji. I have the older, 4th edition version in the smaller box. If you're wondering what size of box this is the same box as Walking in Burano or Walking in Province that they've kind of had. If you don't really care about these cases, you can empty them out and shove all 56 of these tiles in here. No problem. If you really like these and you want to stick them in here, it's not going to happen. It's just not. It's just not. However, you're going to be having lots of issues with lots of little baggies, or maybe you just shove them all in a bag and don't mind the time it takes to set up. Big box! If you get the big box, you can store all of these with these cases in the big box. It'll be a little snug, but yeah, you can do it. If you take the insert and throw it out, then yeah, you can do it pretty easily. So there's a little bit of give and take there. I like the big box. I think it's fine. But I really love the small box for storage and traveling. I mean, that's one of the big bonuses for having this game. But I mean, you could have this box and you just really want to have that. How cool is that? Gameplay. I love how simple this is. I mean, you're looking at a 30-second teach. Usually the iconography are pretty intuitive. And then you just read the rulebook and in 30 seconds, you're ready to go. Now, I don't want to be over the top and say they all play differently, but yeah, they kind of do. Not in that the mechanics are different, but you definitely get into a different headspace when you play the games. Some of them have more face-up cards, and some of them have more face-down cards. And you definitely have a slightly different experience when you play the game, which was a lot of fun to explore, especially when you're playing with the same person. But the real joy isn't the 7 sets. It's just all these new actions that you can explore and try new different things and get to learn again. There's one that you just trash 3 cards face down just immediately, and that changes so much. You don't think it should, but it really, really does. There's one where you place a card face down and you give it to your opponent, and then they score it at the end of the round. What? Giving your opponent a card to score at the end of the round is such a great aha moment, but it really adds this extra flavor of fun and tension to the game. And sometimes you forget that card's there, and then you just sigh and realize you just made a terrible mistake. The one tile that the iconography wasn't too intuitive on was probably the one that I was kind of worried about the most. Essentially, you take 2 cards from your hand, put them in the bottom of the draw deck, draw the top 2, put them face down, and you score them at the end of the round. Now, my initial thoughts were like, that's just, no, that's way too random. I don't like that. But when you play the game, that emergent strategies appears again. And you realize that if I time it right, I can control what cards my opponent draws. So if I put a 2 there, I know my opponent's going to draw that too. Sometimes you have a useless card in your hand, and then you get to get rid of it and draw new, more useful cards. And if you're counting the cards correctly, you can predict what cards are going to be in that deck that you draw. I was able to accurately predict drawing 2 4s, and I won the game. Yeah! But I think my favorite one is this one. It's the one of putting 1 card face down and giving it to your opponent for them to score at the end of the round. And the times that I play this, I've never seen anyone play this action tile without having a big grin on their face from ear to ear, like, oh, you're gonna love this card. And every time they're just like, oh, why did you do that to me? It's like, I knew you were gonna do that. You're gonna give me the extra 2 and it's tied and I'm not gonna score anything. No, thanks, Jay. Replay value. 7 sets. 7 sets. And in true Hanamikoji fashion, is 1 set for each of the 7 geishas. Cool. You were wondering why it's 7? That's why. With 7 sets, you can play Hanamikoji every day of the week, and every day you will have a different experience to explore and try new things. I could rank these like 1 through 7, but the real value here is the variety, not which ones are better. And if you're a Hanamikoji veteran, there are 7 new sets, 56 tiles for you to explore about how they interact with each other and how they play off each other and what patterns to look for. Like, what's not to love about that? Now, I did like some expansions a little bit more than others, but not really. And the reason why I have trouble is because these 7 expansions, they expand not only Hanamikoji, but also Geisha's Road and Jisha Academy, if you happen to have Jisha. Yes, that's right, it's pronounced Jisha. X in Chinese is somewhere between S and SH in English. Sorry, linguistic nerd, I'm sorry. But yeah, these 7 expansions expand all 3 games. What? What expansions do that? All 3 games. Now you know, by the way I'm gushing, that I fully recommend getting these 7 expansions and Hanamikoji if you don't already have it. But how do I feel about Geisha's Road? Well,